Okay, I finally saw Dune Part 2. I know that Dune as a whole is not for everyone. I've talked to a lot of sci fi fantasy fans who don't really like it, or they don't seem to like it, but I've really grown to love it, especially in the last few years. I thought Part 1 was great. I did a brief review for that as well, and I think Part 2 is just as good, if not better. And in between the release of Part 1 and 2, I finally sat down and read the original Frank Herbert novel for the first time, and I thought it was also outstanding. But even without having read the book, I was always kind of a Dune fan because I'm one of those weirdos who really enjoys the 1984 David Lynch version of Dune. I remember watching it on the old Sci Fi channel, and it was like an event. The promos on the Sci Fi channel for that movie were so inflated, like the epic sci fi masterpiece, only on the Sci Fi channel. And it was like a much longer version than the theatrical. So I'll always have kind of a soft spot for the 1984 version, despite the fact that it kind of turned out to be a very cookie cutter standard hero's journey for Paul Atreides. And the last 20 or 30 minutes of that movie are really a mess. Everything gets kind of tied up in a bow in a really ham fisted way. No question that movie has flaws, but Denis Villeneuve's Dune is really the gold standard at this point. I don't think there's any question about it. And every movie that I've seen of his, I've loved. He's directed four of the best science fiction movies in the last 30 years, in my opinion. Dune Part 1 and 2, Blade Runner 2049, and Arrival, which I think might be my favorite thing that he's done. He has not missed yet, so I'm really looking forward to Dune Messiah and whatever he does next. I'm on board. Although, as I said in my video for Dune Part 1, this movie has a distinct lack of pugs. Where are the pugs? I think that's one advantage that the 1984 version has over this, for sure. There's no pugs, and it's tragic. And there are some things in this movie that are very different from the book, but that's kind of good. Like, the differences make it a little bit more epic, and overall it's very true to the story. The visuals are outstanding. The sandworms are the best part. We didn't get enough of them, unfortunately, but they're a sight to see. There's even a little baby one, which is pretty great. I want one. And the acting is also really good. Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica is probably my favorite character. And I really liked Austin Butler as Fade Routha. I thought he was outstanding. I'm still not a big Timothée Chalamet fan. I don't dislike him or anything, but there's something a little off-putting about him, which kind of works for Paul Atreides because he's not this epic Luke Skywalker type character that he's often mistaken for. He's a bit of a manipulator and a means to an end kind of leader. And if they do a Dune Messiah, and I think they will, there'll be even less heroic stuff in that. He really won't be a good guy anymore. And I think a lot of people dislike the story of Dune because it's kind of cynical. Like, it's like Paul Atreides is a cautionary tale about the dangers of charismatic leaders and the dangers of belief and prophecy. And it does seem kind of cynical, but at the same time, I mean, how many charismatic leaders do you truly trust today? I mean, I can't think of one right now. I trust some more than others, but I don't think any potential scandal would surprise me at this point. But maybe I'm overly cynical too. Who knows? But whatever you think about Dune, I think you have to appreciate it on some level because so many other famous franchises have elements from Dune. I mean, there's a ton of similarities with Star Wars and Game of Thrones, for instance. And that's just off the top of my head. I'm sure there's more. So even if you don't love Dune, I'm willing to bet that it was at least a partial inspiration for something that you do love. And as I said, there's a few differences between this movie and the book, as well as the 1984 movie. And this might be going into some spoilers here, so here's your warning if you haven't seen it. I was expecting to see Thufir Hawat in this movie, that character. He doesn't die during the Battle of Arrakis. He's captured and he eventually commits suicide. And that's what happens in the book and the David Lynch version. But he's not in this movie at all. And I thought that was really strange. That was a strange omission. As a mentat, he has value. So it makes sense that they wouldn't kill him. But apparently they did in this version. And another strange difference is the death of Dave Bautista's character, Raban. He ends up fighting Gurney Halleck, which should have been pretty cool, but the fight is actually kind of pathetic. And Raban just kind of dies immediately. And in the book, it kind of just says he's killed by the Fremen off screen, which isn't as satisfying, obviously, but I kind of like that the Fremen are the ones that kill him because he's just so brutal to the Fremen. Not to say he was any nicer to House Atreides, but I think Stilgar or Chani should have been the one to kill him. But that's a very minor complaint. And I do kind of like that he turns out to be a coward who is just all bark and no bite. He's just kind of a weak person and an idiot. And he still manages to be less of a buffoon than he was in the 1984 version, where he was just kind of a bumbling idiot. So he's still an improvement, even though his death was a little unsatisfying. It was also interesting to see Christopher Walken as the Emperor Shaddam IV of House Carino. He was actually pretty great in the few scenes that he's in, but it's kind of funny that this character is always played by an older guy, because in the book, he's actually fairly young. So, I don't know. Maybe they just felt that there aren't enough older characters in the story or something. Who knows? And I guess if you can get Christopher Walken to be in your movie, you get Christopher Walken to be in your movie. It's understandable. And I also thought that it was very strange to see how many projectile handheld weapons there are in this movie. Guns, essentially. I didn't think there were really any in the first movie. But in this movie, we got laser sniper rifles and bazookas. It was just kind of odd that we didn't really see any of that in part one. And if we did, and I'm forgetting, please correct me. But I don't remember anyone firing a gun in the first movie. Everyone was fighting with swords. So that was a little jarring to me. And sometimes the dialogue is a little weird. Like a character says, "oh shit," at one point. And in part one, Jessica, after the encounter with the sandworm, says, "that was insane." Like, it just doesn't seem like Dune talk. So it's a little weird, but it doesn't really bother me. But overall, it's an experience. And it's only March right now, but I pretty much have no doubt that this movie will be my favorite movie of the year. And I kind of can't wait until I can sit down on a weekend afternoon and just watch both parts back to back and just veg out. like Baron Vladimir Harkonnen sitting in his tub of goo watching gladiator fights. To me, that sounds like a pretty good weekend. And if I want to give it some dick rocks, I would give it all the dick rocks. 5 out of 5. Just outstanding. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. And it's been a while since I did a review for a new movie, and maybe now I should take the opportunity to explain the difference between my reviews and my commentaries. I know they're kind of the same thing, but to me, when I do a review, it's usually a new movie, and it's usually just a brief video where I share some general thoughts on it, and I either recommend it or I don't. And I throw the Dick Rock rating in there, of course. And a commentary is also a review, but it's kind of like a review plus. I go over the movie with sort of a fine-tooth comb, and it's much more detailed and more funny, hopefully. And probably a little bit more nitpicky as well. But I don't usually include the Dick Rocks in the commentaries. I know that's weird, but to me the Dick Rock rating is just kind of a goofy gimmick, and not too much thought goes into it. So it's not like anyone asked. So most people who watch my videos probably understand this already, but I figured I'd just clear it up anyway. But that's pretty much all I got for now. If you've seen it, let me know what you think of Dune Part 2. And the next video is not going to be a Star Trek commentary. I'll let that one be a surprise. But I did put up a community poll where you can vote on what my next Star Trek video will be. So take a look at that if you're interested. And yeah, I'm out of steam. That's all I got for now. So until next time, take it easy.